A very good afternoon to ma'am,
Thank
and
you.
it gives me immense pride and excitement to host you as a guest at ISST and do this podcast with you because Olympics is very fresh in our minds. I feel doing it at the right time makes more sense, and because all the students, we just had an Olympic experience fair last week where we kind of exhibited everything in the Olympics that will be, that will create awareness amongst people right from grassroots level to adults of what are the things that are involved in Olympics. So to begin with, ma'am. I don't know where do I start from. There are so many things. As an athlete, so when we talk about sports, it's always as an athlete, you think of Olympic as the highest podium at the international and the global platform. But as a nutritionist, did you ever think that you would get to Olympics as a nutritionist?
Um, Not really, to be very honest, because this was we have been representing India. India has been representing in Olympics in the sports for long, long time, but this is the first time after so many years, decades, that Indian Olympic Association decide to include a sports science and medical team. So I consider myself blessed, and it was fortunate for me that I got to go there. But I will be very honest, since I never saw anyone traveling to Olympics from India, I wasn't dreaming about it. But yeah, by God's grace, I got a chance, and it was a wonderful experience there.
So, ma'am, when you say that, getting the entire science team and support staff going along with the Indian contingent, share your journey of how were you chosen to be a part of this journey, and how did they include you in this contingent as a chief nutritionist?
So I have been working in India for many years now, and in the high performance setting. They wanted someone who has experience across multiple sports, because Olympic, it's not only like, only one sport we are looking into. So I have had experience with a lot of Olympians, with a lot of coaches traveling with them, and had planned diet for a lot of Olympians when they were representing India in 2012 and 16. So this was actually in India my fourth Olympic cycle. So that's why I think, because of the experience and the work that I had been doing on ground, I have worked with many elite organizations in India who are producing the Olympic champions. So based on that, I think I was chosen because of the experience. That too, not only at the high level, I have worked on the grassroots level. So I know the Olympic journey of an athlete when they join a elite organization to be trained, and how they get in different kind of training modes and with different system, and how they grow. Those who first they represent India at various state, and then the qualifications for Olympic. So I have seen their journey. I have worked across all these sports through different, not only Olympics, but Asian Games and Commonwealth Games and all. So I think that was the reason I was chosen for this, being the one of the most experienced person. I think the experience was one of the reason. I would say it was the first reason that I was chosen for this job.
Yes, ma'am, when you say that you've been working with a lot of elite organizations, and that's how your experience eventually led you, that you were, appointed as a chief nutritionist officer. But could you just share your roadmap of, from being a nutritionist and your journey as a nutritionist to reach Olympics? So this would be actually very essential for our students, because there are a lot of students doing their management and sciences, but at the same time, when they know that as a nutritionist, if someone could reach to Olympics, why not they would also reach to Olympics, not as an athlete, but as a part of the team of the Indian contingent?
So yeah, that's really, a good question, because I would love you all to know. I started working in India. I moved to India in 2010-11. Started working by God's grace. I landed in Pune, and one of the best institute of that time, it's still doing, was Army Sports Institute. So I had to clear interviews there. Even though I had returned from US, that did not help me. I had to clear 3 rounds of interviews for that. And I already had about 10 years of experience before that. So it was the whole process that we had to follow. I am fortunate that I got to work with them, and that's the institute where I started learning how things are working. Because when I moved from US, I to be honest, I was like, will be helping a lot, will be making a difference, and all, doesn't happen like that. I fell flat because the challenges were totally different. In India, the knowledge of science at that time, when I talk about 2011, wasn't there. There were only not even handful, only couple of sports nutritionists working in the system at that time. So I had to do a lot of things from scratch, right from talking to athletes, to coaches, even to the administrators. Because see, it's one simple thing. What you put in your body, that's the way how you're going to perform. But to make them understand the same thing scientifically took me a lot of time. So I would say, I do consider myself lucky to be there, but then I had to work very, very, very hard for that, because I had to learn how to make a difference in the system. I knew that I alone cannot change the whole thing, but the main thing when it comes to food and nutrition, we eat with our emotions. Our emotions are connected with food. So if you want to ask someone to change, so you have to change their whole emotional connection with the food. And when you are into elite sports, you have to miss out on a lot of things. You need to sacrifice a lot. So to get that connect with it took me time. It was not an easy job. Even the days where I was supposed to work only 4 hours, I worked 7, 8, 9, 10 hours just to make sure that I'm doing my job right. And I'm so happy, because gradually, from Army Sports Institute, I got a very good platform. I worked with them for 8 long years, and they have been producing, Army has been producing Olympians now and then. Even Neeraj Chopra is a Army personnel, right? So I was fortunate enough, when he joined Army, I was his first official nutritionist there, because he joined in 2017. I worked with Army Sports Institute from 2011 to 2019. So that was all the hard work, and along with that, then I started working with Tata Sports. I also took up assignments for teaching nutrition. It's not only what I know, I had to learn myself to teach what's coming on, new in the field. So it was hard work. But then as people started to know that I had been working with all these elite athletes and in the elite system, they saw results with a lot of my athletes, in the team sports, skill sports, as well as the power sports. So that's where I started getting recognition. And one thing that I think I feel proud saying that when I moved to India, I did not have a godfather or godmother in the system. So wherever I am, it was sheer hard work and passion to do something for Indian sport.
That's absolutely great to hear, ma'am, because that's what we always keep telling our students, that if there is dedication and hard work in whatever you do, it may just take you to
that's
sky.
correct. It may take time, but you get there where you are supposed to be.
Yes, thank you so much. So, ma'am, as a chief nutritionist with the Indian contingent, what were your primary roles and responsibilities?
The team which Indian Olympic Association created was just a few months before the Olympics. Now, a lot of athletes already had their personal team in place. So some of the athletes were working with their own physios, their own psychologists, their own nutritionists, and they are sponsored by different organizations. So they had their own system also. Those who did not have, we stepped in and we started working them right from scratch. But those who already had nutritionists, my primary job was to get everyone to come together. So when I travel with the team to Paris, if anything comes up there, because I would be the person available there. So basically I collected information from everybody. If any athlete has any special kind of food requirement, if any athlete has any food allergies, or they are not used to certain food, and how to find the replacement or substitute of that food. So that's what we did. I got in touch with almost all the nutritionists who were working. So getting them together, I conducted online sessions for them. We met the athletes, Olympic bound athletes who had already qualified. So I went to their training centers in Bangalore. We went to Patiala, where all the elite athletes were training. We met them, their coaches, and the nutritionist and support staff, whatever. So it was just to build the rapport with them, with their support staff, so they know that this time they will be having an official nutritionist there. Because generally what happens, if they don't know anyone around who can guide them about food, they end up eating whatever appeals to them, and it may not be very correct for their, right before training or their competition. So that's what I did. Then also when we received the menus from the organizing committee, we coded it with, because we have a lot of vegetarian athletes. So we coded different recipes that this is vegetarian, this will provide you protein, this is your carbohydrate source for our athletes to find it easily, because there are 50, 100 of dishes at different centers. So we didn't want them to get lost. So we just told them that this is, and it was released on an app by Indian Olympic Association, and we also individually shared it with all the nutritionist coaches and the federations, so they can go through the menu and they are mentally prepared what kind of food they are going to get there and what to expect. So that was done, and we told them to check it before they go to the dining hall, so they know according to their next day's training or next day's event what they have to pick from the menu there. So these all were the tasks, and then guided the athletes at the Olympic venue. I went to dining hall, I walked around the dining hall with all the athletes with their plates and all in hand, that this has protein, because a lot of them don't even want to read long documents. So then we did a tour of the dining hall there and told them this is what you need to pick if you want to have carbohydrates. This is something which is similar to our lentils, our dals in India. And another thing what we did there, we had meeting with the organizing committee and the catering staff there in Olympics, because our athletes did want something to be added, and we just told them. So it took them some time, but then it was, part of it was done.
I was just going to ask, so is the menu pre-decided and not that what every country would prefer? So there are no choices of preferences in food that the organizing committee has?
Yes, so menu is almost, I think, was decided a year ahead. Okay. We got it little late for us, but then they tried to, Olympic committee itself, they tried to include as much as they can to cater to different countries. But to be fair, to them, they cannot cater everything for each country. Right. So they tried to include some of the Indian things, like there was vegetable biryani in the menu one day. There was butter chicken one day. So it was not like every day. So they were different. There were green vegetables and Indian preparations were there, but it was not every day. Rice was something which was there every day, and some, biryani sauce kind of thing that they can add to their rice and all. But every day they were not providing every Indian food, and we didn't have the say later on, because and they also are like, they cannot cater according to hundreds of country, the whole food, because they have to cater to the world. Yeah. So that's why. But yeah, they try to put in, many dishes, as many recipes as they can for each country.
So does that actually impact the performances of the athlete? Because food is something that, that keeps them, gives them energy at all the levels and all. So does that actually impact the performance during the Olympics? So when they have, multiple matches going on, probably a week across. So if they're not able to cater to the food that they really want, so how does it impact the performance of the athlete?
See, if they don't eat, it's going to impact. That's why we prepared them well. That, this is going to be menu, this is what you have to pick from the menu for this and this time, and this is going to be the portion size, or the quantity. So even when I shared the menu with their individual nutritionists, I told them make their diet plan as per this menu so they can pick this stuff. So we made sure from our side, we did all that we could to make sure that they are not under fueled, so just to make sure that they are being fueled according to their, because they had different sources of protein, whether it comes to non-vegetarian, vegetarian. They had quinoa, they had tofu, they had lentils, a lot of lentils and cheese and milk and curd, so many things there. So nutritionally, if I talk about the diet, the food was excellent. The produce and all that, it was very fresh. You wouldn't find it, anywhere else, or at least in India, that fresh food. So the quality of food was really good. Right. The preparation, you all must have read, I'm sure that, initially there was a hype that food wasn't good and it was getting finished and all that. So it wasn't good is because, so if you are used to eating something and we ask you to eat something and you won't find it good. Right. But if you ask me nutritionally, it was really good, So it was just the personal preference that people people would have talked about that food wasn't good, but nutritionally it was one of the best things. Only thing, how to combine it for your sport, what you pick and choose for your that time diet, that was important.
Okay, so when we talk about all this, you mentioned that you were working closely with the nutritionists of the athletes who already had.
Yes.
So for how long, what was the time duration that you actually started working with them just before the Olympics?
So I would say it was about 2 months before the Olympics, so they had enough chances. So generally what happens in nutrition, we can't change anybody's diet to a large extent at the last moment. So that's why we made sure that we get in touch with them and they start talking to their athletes accordingly. So I can say at least a month in advance, the athletes, the nutritionists, of course we started our conversations much earlier. They all knew what they need to expect there, and they all had their plans ready that according to this and this we had to eat. So we had enough chance to make any amendment in there. Also we went one step ahead. So in one of the Sai Center in Patiala, we did get few recipes prepared according to the menu that they were going to get in Paris.
Okay.
So that also helped. So at least our athletes were prepared. That this is something tastes like this, looks like this, and this is what we are going to get in.
Okay.
That was just so that they can be more comfortable. Yeah.
I mean, that's the preparation that actually goes before you actually.
And it's a huge task because we had 117 athletes and their coaches, because we had to take coaches also, on board, because coaches also decide, mera athlete ye khayega, and a lot of things like that. So we had to do all that, so that I would say more than being there at Olympic and working, the homework that we did here was really too much. But I'm happy that it all went well.
Yeah, so it effectively smoothly went well for all the athletes throughout.
Yes, pretty much. And luckily we didn't have any kind of food issues or gastrointestinal issues, that some of the food didn't suit any athlete. So luckily we didn't have a single episode like that.
That's good to know. So were there any key strategies that you implemented as a nutritionist there, that was because not everybody was accompanied with their own nutritionist.
Yes.
So any key strategies that you implemented during the Olympics that actually helped the athletes?
See, I'll tell you, in terms of food, we didn't have to do much. Because the athletes who are performing at that level are aware what they're supposed to eat, so I mean, when I used to visit the dining hall, and whoever I met, including Neeraj Chopra, he knows what he has to eat. So I asked him also, do you have any issues? He said no, because he's used to, he's training most of the time out of India, so he's used to eating that kind of food. So no complaints, no nothing, and he knows what he's supposed. His coach eats with them, his support staff, whoever was present eats with them. So that was not much of a challenge. The challenge was the heat. So we just made sure that we re-emphasized the importance of hydration. We kept telling our athletes, make sure you take your, all the beverages on time, liquids as much as you can consume, because it was too hot. And we were not exercising like the athletes were doing, and we were drained, so we were drinking a lot of water and electrolytes. So that was one challenge, because this time Paris did experience higher than normal temperatures. So that was the one thing which we were really vigilant about. Other than that, most of them, honestly, they all know what they're supposed to eat at this hour, because if they don't eat well, they mess up their performance. So they are sincere that way, most of our athletes.
Okay, so I think you just answered my next question. That was, what were the challenges that you actually faced there? So when you talk about
I think I already answered that. Food wise, only challenge, when I talk about the feedback that I took from athletes, most of them were like, chapati is not there and chole is not there, and we would like to have this. So those were, but we were expecting that. It wasn't a challenge. When you go on an international stage like that, you can't be getting all your home cooked meals. So we were prepared to handle that, so it wasn't a challenge. We had our set answers for that, and we told them that you can. I also ended up preparing a document. Vegetarian athletes were still struggling a little bit, so I prepared a document, because Olympic, they had divided the food into 4 sections. There was world, Asian, French and halal. 4 different districts were there. So what to pick where? So then I prepared the whole thing. See, if you want to have wheat tortillas, which look pretty much like roti, I told them you need to go to that district if you want to pick that up. So that is something, you know, I had to do there, especially for our vegetarian athletes who were finding it difficult to pick everything from, one district.
Yeah. So did you also find athletes? So when you talk about vegetarians and non-vegetarians, was vegan also
Yes.
something that was catered to?
Oh yes, they took really good care of it. I mean, the vegan, lot of varieties of vegan food were there, and it was clearly marked that, you know, this is vegan. I forgot to share some of those pictures. I should have shared that. So I did take pictures of that because we can, you know, later on prepare our athletes that this is what you need to, you know, look for. So it was all marked pretty well. Even in their menu that we shared with them, we had written that this is vegan, this contains meat, this contains nuts, this has dairy. So all that was taken care of.
Okay. Ma'am, any athlete that you closely worked with for their nutrition plans and, you know, the results were directly seen in the performances? Like you said, a couple of them had their nutritionists, but apart from those, did you ever closely work with other athletes who really, you know, were performing at
What I would say, most of them had their. My job was more to supervise them, not to sit there and, you know, provide them the day-to-day diet plan. My job was there to make sure that whatever is being prescribed by the nutritionist, they are eating that. So it won't be right on my part that I take credit for, you know, someone else's work. But yeah, there were a few athletes with which we worked, like, you know, their nutritionists were not there in the village. So I had to go and check on them, you know, whether they are, and some of them who had difficulty even reading English and all that. So that kind of, guidance I provided with them. But right then and there, it was not the right time to sit with them because they already had their plans and all decided. But then, yes, I mean, if you see, I mean, you can just take case of Neeraj Chopra. He eats what he's supposed to eat. He needs, I mean, I did go and sit with them a couple of times. I checked his food and all that. He was eating really well, really clean, and the portion size was right, and we saw in his silver. So it's always the case. I mean, of course, it's a sport. It's not like only because of food they are doing great. It's like if it's your day, you do good. If it's not your day, you're not doing good. Because I would say most of them were nutrition wise and the training wise were doing good, but some had their day, some did not have. So sport is, you know, very unpredictable that ways.
Yes. So ma'am, I would like to ask you, what were your key takeaways of your experience at Paris 24?
It was a great learning because we still have, when it comes to nutrition, we still have a lot of things to take care of. So it was not only to work with our athletes. My intention was to go there and see what other countries are doing. Those countries who are much ahead of us in medal tally. So I did meet the nutritionists from different countries. I did go and check. I mean, some countries had their whole pantry set, but they had planned really well in advance. So their athletes didn't have to go for tea and coffee out to the grab and go or, you know, the food stalls. So a lot of planning needs to be there. So I had a diary, more than half of the diary is full with the observations and what India can do to, you know, do better in terms of catering for athletes in terms of their foods and nutrition. So a lot of learning. It was a wonderful experience because it's the greatest stage when it comes to sport. It was to see what other countries are doing and where we can improve. We have a lot of scope to improve in that term. So yeah, I mean, I would say experience was great, but it also came with a lot of learnings.
Ma'am, what were the key differences that you actually found out where India is actually lagging when it comes to, you know, this global stage?
So it's not only food wise, there are a lot of things which, you know, I don't think is the right platform to, you know, comment on that. But then when it comes to food, I again and again tell athletes and the coaches, when you work with, like when I was working with some athletes in US, it was not difficult. If you tell them you need to eat this, they will eat that, because taste is not the priority for them. For us, if you don't find the masala which is used at my home, if I don't find in food, I will not try that. So this is something we need to work a lot on our athletes, with the coaches and the athletes, because coaches are the one we look up to. They are with the athlete the whole time. So if they reinforce the same, information that, you need to eat. So I generally tell, and that has been a challenge for me, because the athletes are, even for milk, we don't want them to have full fat milk all the time, and they say the low fat milk doesn't taste good. So it's like as simple as that, even we struggle for that thing. And if we tell them that, the issue we face in India is, with each region the diet changes. Like if you go to any other foreign countries, it's like sausage and salami and pizza and bread and all these things are across the country same. In India, you go from south to north, east to west, things change. So I have had athletes from Manipur who I had to work very hard with to make them eat idli. They wouldn't eat idli. So, so those are the real on ground challenge for us. Now, first of all, within India, we face so much, and when they go to foreign countries, then it's even. So, especially for athletes who were there the first time, who haven't had a lot of exposure of training outside, so they are used to the food. So they would constantly keep looking, roti nahi hai, masala nahi hai, dal is just the boiled one, because they didn't get tadka dal and all that, right? And of course, we shouldn't expect that at such level. So this is my key takeaway. Then more than the quality and the nutrition knowledge and all, more than we have to work with them to be more flexible when it comes to eating, because for them performance should be the first priority, not the taste of food. So I generally tell them that when you're eating a food, don't put your heart in it. That's my, I'm going to get it copyrighted, the whole thing. You don't put your heart in it, you put your brain in food, because what it is going to do for your performance. So that is something our athletes need to learn. I mean, a lot of them.
So, ma'am, don't you think this needs to be inculcated right from a very early stage into an athlete? Because when you look at, aiming to bigger competitions like Asian Games or Commonwealth and then Olympics,
Yes.
Food preferences, I mean, being an Indian, food is something that we always thrive upon.
Yes.
So, should this be inculcated right, from an early age into an athlete's life, that the food, the kind of food or the choices of food that we make, like you mentioned, that put your brain into it rather than in your heart.
Yes.
So would that be a message to?
Absolutely, this has to be done at an early age. So I tell everyone that we need to start working food wise and nutrition wise with our athletes from the grassroots. If you send me an athlete at the age of 18 and I have had cases like that. I was working with a 16 years old athlete who was addicted to tea and coffee. Now the mother of that boy tells me that, of course, the father also, they met me and we just want him to get rid of this and this. I said, yeah, it will take time. Then after a month, they said he is still drinking tea and coffee. I was like, you took 16 years to spoil him. In a month, you want me to fix it? That's not right. Okay. So this is something we need to start work. And I have had great kids, that I've been working from age 8 of 9, they are now 14, 15. When I was able to work with them at that age, we build the rapport, they trust me, and when I'm saying something and they see the changes, those are the kids, they are doing, they are like anything you want them to eat that it's going to help you with your performance, they'll eat that. I mean, I've had really good athletes who will say, ma'am, you tell what do I have to eat, and they'll eat boiled, they'll eat, in any kind of. So I'll just give you an example. Those who eat chicken and all that, if I tell you to have, we are going to have butter chicken today, and then I tell you I'm adding some boiled chicken to your salad, you all will go for butter chicken. So we all are groomed like that, our upbringing has been like that. Right. So I tell you to eat boiled chole, like, garbanzo beans, and then I give you a nice chola and kulcha. You'll go for the later one. So this is something we do need to, the habits are not formed just in a few months. So if we start working from an early stage, yes, we do give them a cheat meal day also, because athletes are human. We need to treat them like that. It's not like the whole life they have to stay without eating the cakes and samosas and all that. So they do get their cheat meal days. But then, yeah, working with them at a very young stage is really required, because as a nutritionist I have faced challenge. If I am dealing with a grown-up athlete, it's very difficult, to the extent some of them say, madam aapko kuch pata nahi hai. I was like, okay. So because it goes to their heart when I tell them, if it's his or her favorite food and I tell them you're not supposed to eat that every day, so they don't like me. So it's okay. They don't like me, but then it's good for their performance. So I have to keep working. So yeah, that is one thing we all need to understand. And if you also dealing with athletes, if you have some preference with food and you want to excel in sport, just make sure that you don't put your heart in food. Put your mind if you want to excel in sport.
That would be really tough for all of us, ma'am.
I know, I'm there if you need a scolding or whatever.
Okay. So, ma'am, again, taking you back to your journey of how you actually reached to this Olympic podium as a nutritionist, what are the skills, apart from the technical skills, that you need to learn to actually get in here? So when I talk about the roadmap, you were fortunate enough to get a lot of elite organizations
Yes,
to work with.
yes.
But again, technical knowledge took you there.
Yeah.
But apart from that, what are the other skills that you think are actually essential?
So see, I tell everyone, even I get interns, who work with me, or the juniors that I work with, I tell them we are dealing with humans. Okay, so one thing doesn't fit all. Whatever we have studied, so you know what happens, and that's what I'm seeing in India. Once we study anything in science, we become very rigid. This is the way it has to be. It's not, because when we are dealing with different human, I cannot implement 100% of science on them. I have to get that human touch in it. So I would say the best, one of the quality or I'm gifted with is the way I talk, So my consulting, counseling skills, that's what is. So I have a good convincing power when I'm talking to athletes, and it's not like I didn't work on it. I did a few courses on that, on communication skill, how to make people understand you better. So that, and I also tell that since I have so many years of experience and this and that, there are people who have masters in sports nutrition, PhDs and all that. If you go and tell athlete and coaches that you have to do they'll not going to listen. First you listen to them. They have a reason why they have been eating the way. They have a reason why they are arguing also with you. So try to understand what is the reason why they think that way, and then gradually you can. So the thing is, when you're dealing with human, other than your knowledge and your skills and all that, you need to consider it that you cannot implement 100%. I would say whatever we studied in sports nutrition, on each individual, I won't be implementing more than 50-60%. I have to modify. You have to tweak into, to make it more individualized. Because if you keep telling someone to just eat boiled and the green vegetables, they get bored. We will get bored, So we have to put in that fun thing also in the food. Food doesn't has to be boring that they start hating it. And then they will. So I just tell my athletes, even if you are eating something which is not good, tell me. If you tell me, I'll be able to help you next time. How do you overcome, or how do you, control your cravings? If you don't tell me, then you are doing injustice to yourself and your sport. So this is something, we need to take it with a pinch of salt, that not the whole 100% science you can implement on all the individuals. You have to modify your techniques, your plans and your strategies according to sport. And within the, like if I have a hockey team or football team and there are 20 players traveling, not everyone will be eating the same. Of course, their requirements are not same. So you have to sit, and their understanding pattern, like one person you tell you have to eat this, then he or she will follow. Okay, perfect, I'll follow this. The other one will be like, I hate the plan. Just looking at it, I hate it. So now you have to spend an hour to make them understand that yes, you can hate, but just try. If not 100%, try if you can do 70% of. So we have to come to terms with that. So I generally have deals like that with my athletes, especially the younger ones. If you do this, then next week I'll put this in your diet plan, so like that. So yes, you have to have that interpersonal skills. Yes. So and what do you say, soft skills.
Yeah.
That read their body language, whether they are very open to what you're saying or not. See, unless we all can go and give a lot of gyan to anybody, but then if they are not open to what you're saying, there is no sense. So I generally talk to athletes also, say I'll do this and this, but you have to promise me that you're going to follow. You have to be honest with me. So yeah, soft skills and convincing power has to be there.
Ma'am, just to add, does networking really work in your case when you had to go to this podium? I mean, just a question, because networking is a skill. So at any point of time, did you feel that the kind of networks you made actually took you to this podium?
Networking, see, if people know you are working there, they will remember the face and all. But if you don't know your work, you can't get there.
Yeah.
People pretty quick figure out your knowledge and you know all if you're not getting them. See, again, as I tell, not only one thing can get you the result. So the same, only diet cannot make a lot of changes, you know, in anything. But then networking is like, people should know that, okay, so I'll tell you, when I was working with Army Sports Institute, even when I left, a lot of athletes still come back to me. They say, madam, ये आपने उस time बताया था, इसने ये चीज ने काम किया था, अभी आपके साथ काम करना, like that they say. So if we call that as networking, because the athlete already, or the coaches, there are some coaches who recommended my name, that because they saw me working, not always giving them gyan, I listened to them. And so networking will only make your face familiar. People may know your name, they may know your face, but if your work doesn't speak for yourself, there, I don't think the networking only will work. I mean, it may work for many, it hasn't worked that way for me.
For you.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm coming to the most, I would not say controversial, but the highlight of the entire Paris Olympics when we talk about Vinesh Phogat.
Yes.
So I am just keeping this towards the end because I think all of us are very curious to know, because all of that had to deal with, those 100 grams. And I think nobody better than a nutritionist could explain this to us. So if you could just, put some highlight or just tell us what exactly, how it went and your take on this entire thing.
Yeah, so first thing is, nutritionist, because it was said on video that she was working with nutritionist and all that. So nutritionist got famous or infamous, whatever you can say. I'd been getting a lot of questions. So first, one thing I would like to clear here, she had her personal team of nutritionists. So she was already working with that nutritionist for last few years. It was unfortunate that she couldn't lose that 100 grams. We really didn't know, because I wasn't there in the village that night when, the whole thing was going on. It is unfortunate, but I didn't even have the whole data for what diet and all, was given to her. But one thing is, they didn't expect her to gain so much weight, so that went against her. I feel my heart goes out, because it is coming, and she fought really well. So I mean, it was really sad in the morning when I heard the news, then this and this has happened. We are still not aware, because see, one is like giving the whole diet plan and all that, and how your body reacts to it. So maybe see, if I'm drinking a liter of water today and I'm eating certain food, I may gain certain weight tomorrow. And with female, a lot of goes with their hormonal cycles too, so we just didn't know what happens inside the body, how your body reacts to how the weight bounces back. So unfortunately, she gained more than what was expected, and that became little difficult. But more than that, I don't think I'm the right person to, comment in a deep sense, because I wasn't directly working with her personally.
Okay, thank you so much for answering that, ma'am. Ma'am, lastly, I would like to ask you, you've reached a podium, Olympic podium as a nutritionist. From where do you see yourself from here in the future?
I don't have an answer to that. To be very honest, sometimes, life brings you a lot of things. Like I said, I wasn't dreaming for this. I was just working on ground. A lot of Olympians I have worked with, and this was not so. This also came by God's grace. I kept working hard, and I'll just keep doing my work. And I'll also now, in other than nutrition, I'm going to add a lot of well-being content to this, because the same thing I was also thinking, like, what after this? Because Olympic is one of the, the biggest platform, or your career achievement.
Yeah.
So what comes after this? So I don't have a straight answer for that. I'm still like, it's been just, I reached India only on 13th. So now I will start, just was catching up on the sleep. So I'll start thinking now, and when I have an answer, I would give you the answer, what I'm going to do next.
All right. Thank you so much, ma'am, for, giving us all these insights about, the Paris Olympics. Now I keep the question and answer sessions from the students.
Please ask questions, make you smarter. And I have seen this is one difference. When I was working in US and in India, we are hesitant, we don't ask questions. They don't care what others think. They'll just ask if they're, because it helps them to gain knowledge about something. And if you ask question, maybe four other people will benefit with that. So do ask.
So some of the players were looking drained before the match started. So what was the reason? It was heat or their diet or anxiety or pressure?
You're saying they were looking drained. Yeah, so there are a lot of factors to it, because some athletes had traveled and they didn't get enough sleep. Of course, they all were there well ahead than their competitions. Some of them were really bothered by the heat. So if you must have heard, there was a lot of news and all that, but thanks to our sports ministry and all, the ACs, individual room ACs were arranged for them. Because so if before that you saw the athletes drained, it may have been a lot because of the heat. And let me tell you, the village is huge. So you have to walk from one place to another place. I mean, I don't know, I was every day thinking, okay, I don't need any more. My watch was very happy that you are working out a lot. So it's not only their training and all, but even, walking from one place to another, it was like we were getting drained because of the heat. So I would just say heat was one of the reason that they were, not looking there. Of course, if some athletes worked on their weight loss and all that, that adds a lot. But then I personally didn't see many athletes drained. In fact, some of them I was like, wow, how come you look so fresh before your competition? But those were the athletes who took care of their sleep, who took care of their hydration and diet and sleeping, on time. So recovery matters a lot for that.
Yes, any other questions?
There was a male wrestler who was able to reduce 4.5 kgs in 10 months. How was it not possible for
I wouldn't comment on that because I haven't seen the numbers on paper. So you know what I mean, that yes, there was a male wrestler 4.5 kg. I also heard, but I haven't seen that on paper. What was his weight before that? So I wouldn't be able to comment on that, because in Vinesh's case, yes, it was unfortunate, and for any a player in any weight category losing the weight, say 1 or 2 kg is normal for them. 4.5 looks way too much. So I don't have real readings what exactly it was there. So that's why I'm refraining from commenting on that. Yes.
If an athlete does wish to reduce their weight before their performance, so as a nutritionist, what would you suggest them to do?
So see, I have to be really clear. This answer doesn't go well with many. They are not supposed to lose a lot of weight just a day before or two, because I tell them you have to be in your weight category a week prior to, so that when you're going to fight, you are going there well fed. You're not starving or anything. But unfortunately in India, that is the trend. They just feel that if they are training a lot with a higher weight and then they reduce. So reducing this kind of weight at the last moment is not a very wise decision. And I think if our athletes go more scientific, not only athletes, but if the coaches also promote this, they have to go more scientific about this. And there is no way in a day or two you can lose 2.5, 3, 4, 5 kg of fat weight. All you're losing is water to make weight. Of course, they have that, enthusiasm to fight and win and all this and that, but it can also lead to injuries. So scientifically, that's not right that you lose weight at the last moment, but unfortunately, that is the common practice in India. I have worked with a few athletes, weightlifters, wrestlers, judo player, taekwondo player, a lot of weight specific sport. Some of the athletes understood and they started working on that, so they will get their weight to their fixed category at least 7 to 10 days before. Now the good thing is they have one less stress in life, that I have to lose weight. So it affects you mentally also, you are relaxed. Second thing is, you don't lose much energy. When you're eating and fighting, then of course you have, but when you're starving and fighting, so it's as simple as that. but we haven't been very successful in, because they say it's been going on, we all have been doing this and that, so it will take some time, but we will see the changes. Those of my wrestlers and weightlifters who did stick to the same, like you can reduce 500 grams, you can reduce a kg and still maintain your energy, but 2 3 4 5 kg is insane. That's not the right way to lose it. So that's a big challenge we face in the weight specific sport. As a nutritionist, I every time suggest them, you be in your category at least a week in advance, because that will give you an edge. It's as simple as like common sense. I am starving and having a bout with someone who came on the same weight without starving. My chances of losing are more. So it's simple common sense. But yeah, I think we'll take a little time to get to that.
So just to add on to this, how do other countries look at this? So when you say in India, this has been a trend of,
Yes.
losing weight, but how about other countries?
So this trend they picked from other countries earlier, but other countries learned their lessons. There had been a case, one wrestler was reducing his weight, running on the treadmill, wearing those, wind cheaters and all that. He got down and after that he fainted. He was taken to, it's not now, I think it was in 1980s, not Indian wrestler. So they were all following the same technique. Nobody knew how by the time they took him to hospital, he was pronounced dead. Nobody knew how, because he was healthy, he was athlete and all that. During the autopsy, they found it was the severe dehydration and his system collapsed. So they were alerted, they are now, they don't. So internationally, the norms, if you want to know, it's like your training weight should not be more than 3 to 5% of your category weight. In India, we don't follow that. That is the scientific strategy, that whenever you're training in whatever weight category, so if you're into 49, your weight should not be more than 50 or 50.5 if you are in that category. All right. But then in India, any 49 category would easily be 53, 52 and all that. So higher is your weight, more difficult it becomes to lose. So 3 to 5% internationally what they follow, that your weight should be only that much above your category. Then only you can reduce safely.
Okay.
लेकिन एज अ एथलीट जब मैं नेशनल्स के लिए जाती हूँ दिल्ली भोपाल, खाने के लिए उतना मिलता नहीं, तो हमें कुछ ऐसे चाइनीज हो गए, बट एंड इफ वी हैव अ मैच अर्ली इन द मॉर्निंग 8, डिटेल इज द लाइक इन अर्ली इन द मॉर्निंग 7 और 8, तो फिर उस टाइम में भी क्या खाए?
So see, you are experienced in terms of what is available, what is not available, right? I have worked a lot with shooters in all shotgun, pistol, rifle, everything. So it's not only in shooting. A lot of venues you don't get anything good to eat. So then it becomes your responsibility. You carry some food which is not perishable with you. The first thing, as a nutritionist, I also do, if I travel for my work anywhere and I know there won't be, if I'm staying in some guest house and all where the food and not available 24/7, I find a fruit shop somewhere